Well, hello and welcome to Pick Up the Mic. My name is Mike Greiner, the lead pastor of Harvest Church on our only official podcast, and the gang is back together. We have Top Shelf Will as the
trusty sidekick.
Trusty sidekick, who actually it's his job to make sure this thing keeps moving. And we have our beautiful producer Sunshine back at the helm, and no more guests for a while, at least for 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first time the two of us are in this new set
new
arrangement.
Studio. I know this is really nice that we got new pictures behind us. They got my guys from Oh Brother Where Art Thou down here staring up at us in affection. I don't know if you guys can see them. See, they look up to us. We've got our spiritual advisor,
the outlaw
Josie Wales, who's perhaps one of the best lines in all movies was. Worms gotta eat too. So he's a good guy, and here we are. But somebody found this really cool thing.
Yeah. Jeanne.
Yep. So that's cool. We're happy to be back. It is a little bit of a. Will said we have to mention John MacArthur today. So I mentioned it. John MacArthur's dead. Okay, let's move on.
No. I was joking with Mike off camera that Mike has often been a critic of John, which at times I think Johnny Mac. If you don't know, John MacArthur, Reformed Baptist preacher from Southern California, very large radio ministry.
But now that he's dead, you can only say nice things.
Yeah, you can only say nice things. But Mike's been a critic of his for a long time because sometimes,
we're not going to talk about it right now. We can't talk about it now. We'll put this off. We'll
Come on.
Later in the show.
Oh.
So that's something to look forward to. Later on in this very show, we're going to have a Johnny Mac moment. But someone else who I'm not going to mention right now also died. Probably a little more interesting person in my mind. We're going to have a tribute to that person who died. We also have I think, the most creative video yet from Babylon Bee, and I really enjoyed it, and we're going to go over that. But first, the Bible.
Okay.
First,
as
the Bible.
It should be, first the Bible. And this is a switch up. We do whatever we want here.
Yeah. Well, last week, me and Isaac were here, and we
Wait, whose chair did he sit in?
He sat in yours, and he took control. I mean, he took control. So, at least he tried.
I gave up trying long ago.
He did too by the end, but he had a game. We played a game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he had questions, but we tried doing the Bible first, and we'll try it again. See how this goes. What we're trying to do is the sermon that is not yet preached. What if we looked at the text together before it's finished, and then. When people hear it, it's after it was preached, so that if they forgot the sermon, like most time you do, somewhere around the potato salad on Sunday afternoon, what was the sermon about? It can come back to you a couple days later because it's not the sermon that matters as much as the Word of God. So We're in Luke 16, and we finished the bit about the unfaithful servant who was being praised for being unfaithful. And then it ends, starting in verse 14, it kind of ends with the Pharisees not being happy because Jesus just blasted love of wealth and love of money. And verse 14 says, now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, were listening to all these things and were scoffing at him, which I find an interesting. Why do people scoff?
Is that scoffing?
Well, that was the sound of scoffing. The scoffing also has words. That was more like scuffing.
Scuffing?
Scuffing is like, what an idiot. How stupid. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Who believes this crud?
Yeah.
Why would...
Get a load of this guy.
Get a load of this guy. Why would they do that?
They want to discredit the message.
Yeah, I guess if you're out of arguments, you scoff. And what they're scoffing at is he just said, no servant can serve two masters. And he says, you cannot serve God and money. And they go, sure you can.
Look at me. I'm doing it great
I'm
right
doing it
now.
every day. I'm going to get on my private jet and fly to another state and get another gold watch. Sure you can. I can do this. They're scoffing at him. There's some irony there, wouldn't you say? He is the Lord of the universe, and they're scoffing at him. This seems like, talk about, that song "Bad Bad Leroy Brown."
Yes.
You don't pull on Superman's cape. You don't spit in the wind. You don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim.
Yes.
And that wasn't Leroy Brown. That's Jim.
Yes.
Big Jim. Leroy Brown. Well, forget it. I had the wrong title, but that's the song.
But that's the song. You don't tug on Superman's
You do not scoff at the Son of God, who can throw you into hell.
People still do all the time, though.
More than the Pharisees. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. They think they're safer because he's not sitting in front of them, they think.
So what's he going to do to them? He's not going to throw them in hell right now. He's still trying to get folks saved. By trying, I don't mean attempting to do something he can't figure out how to do. I mean, he's in the process of preaching the gospel so folks can be saved. And he says, so he turns to him and he says, you are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men. But God knows your hearts, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. Now, this is the main point of the sermon you heard a couple weeks ago, even though it kind of covers the next couple of verses too. But this is the main point in that particular sermon, because, when you preach through big chunks of the gospel, sometimes you really need a sermon for every verse, but you just don't want to slow down that much. But this verse 15, I think it deserves a sermon all by itself. You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, but God knows your heart, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. There's a mechanical structure to that language. You justify yourselves in the sight of men. And we're good. We love money, but we still serve God, so we're good. And all the men are going to say, yeah, you are. Why? Because they're the priests. You're not allowed. It's kind of like reverence for the Pope. You have people say, we're Christians, and we believe Mary never sinned, and we believe that Mary never died, that she ascended to heaven. Why? Because the Pope said so, and who's going to argue with the Pope? Well, you justify yourself in the sight of men. There's an authority that comes with being the Pope.
Yeah, I mean, my mind, you went to Catholic references, but I would say it's even cultural esteem, right? Like a well-to-do businessman. He's a vice president in a company. He's doing well financially. He's a lawyer at a law firm. He wears a suit. There's just a certain level, an air of importance that he's afforded in our culture. When he goes out amongst the plebes, as you said a few ago, and God doesn't count any of that stuff as important.
But it's very influential to us.
Yes.
We could say it's not, but it is. In our world,
you just act differently even when you're in those circles of people. Until you're very mature and secure in yourself or have a particular personality type, like I would say even myself, like if you were to throw me in a dinner party with a room of federal senators, I probably would behave a little differently. I'd sharpen up. I'd be prim and proper. I would call them sir and ma'am, and I think that's important.
You might even betray your own values.
Yeah, you might. I might even be hesitant.
Hanging out with the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. Say, yeah, I'm going to go get drunk and rape some people and rob a liquor store, because you don't want them to hate you. And they go, who is this guy? You go, isn't that what you people do? We're just a motorcycle club, buddy. All we do is ride motorcycles. No, what about who was I thinking of? Now I forgot, because I made myself laugh. No one else laughed. Notice people at home that no one else laughed but me. But that's okay, because I laugh at my own humor, so it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. But you justify yourselves in the sight of men. There's authority that it feels like you ought to go along with this person because he's important.
And also, I don't know if this is in here. I'm adding this. So this is a stretch. But I'm in the summer of C.S. Lewis.
Oh, what a great summer.
It's been awesome.
What are you reading?
I'm trying to listen to everything he's written. Then I'm almost there.
Everything Christian.
Yes.
Do you know there's a whole volume of writing that doesn't get published, but you can find some of it online.
No, but
it was all about English literature and grammar and stuff like that. Anyway, go on.
So he's got a unified theme in some of his writing when it comes to people who consider themselves important. So both in his fiction writing, in the Space Trilogy, and then in some of the nonfiction that accompanies those same ideas, the abolition of man and others, he touches on this idea that people of certain believed worldly esteem, they think the rules aren't for them. I get to bend the rules because those are to keep the normal people in check. But down. I'm above these because I have clarity about how the world should work. And I, in his fiction series, some of the big bad guys, it's even in the Narnia ones, in The Magician's Nephew.
Oh, yeah.
The magician says, I can do black magic because I'm a magician, and those prohibitions are for people not as important as I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's the vibe I'm getting here is you have these people who esteem themselves highly.
Well, they're the Pharisees. They have an office that makes them higher. You ever read Crime and Punishment?
I haven't. I've tried to get into some of the Russian authors.
Out of all the Dostoevsky, read that one.
Yeah.
Listen, you can listen to that one too. There's some good translations.
I was forcing myself through the Brothers Karamazov.
That's much harder.
And
no, switch when you get a chance. So this is about this one guy, and he starts thinking, I'm going to kill someone because I can. And the way he justifies it is he says, the great men are above the law. That's why they do revolutions. We consider, the Napoleons of the world great. We consider the Tsar great. We consider these great men great because they realize in order to bring a greater good, you're allowed to kill people, and it improves the earth. So he picks this woman who's what used to be called a Shylark from Shakespeare, but we call it what do you call it when you borrow some money from people and then they break your legs because you don't pay it back?
Loan shark.
Loan sharks. She's a bit of a pawnbroker / loan shark. She,
when you can't get a loan from a bank, you get it from a shady person.
And she'll buy stolen goods from you, or she'll give you things. So he decides he's going to kill her because she's worthless. And she hasn't troubled him at all, but he just feels I can do this. There is no law against doing this, and he does it. But then it leads to things happening that he doesn't expect, and he interacts with a cop a lot, and the cop figures out right away who he is, but he has to get the proof. And it's this philosophical discussion over right and wrong. It has a great ending too. It's very Christian. He ends up converting to Christ. But in any case, there are people who justify themselves. I'm right no matter what I do. And a sense of power, you're right, absolutely does that. A sense of I'm bigger than the other people. And the Pharisees were there. They were there. They were the leaders in their society, and they were the ones who said what the Bible said. Preaching the Bible is really a very powerful position when you think about it, because people trust the Bible. That's right. I went right to the Pope. People trust the Pope because he sits in the Pope's chair. So you think, okay, this guy, he's justified in the sight of men, and people want his approval. They want his blessing. They want him to touch your head and say, oh, blessings, even though popes throughout the ages have taught some of the worst doctrines and lies in the history of the church. People hold them in high esteem. He says, but it doesn't have to be religious people, but in this case it is. It could be any people. But it says, God knows your hearts. What does that mean? How does that level the playing field, that God knows your hearts?
He knows all your deepest motivations, that you're actually driven by self-esteem, like self-aggrandizement, that you have greed and want for power and greatness, and like all of the negative motives that can be masked quite easily with some of these societal positions of
That's
power
right. So
are laid bare before him.
Very good. So you can look very prestigious and respected, and God says, but I know your hearts. And that equalizes, because he could look over. I mean, obviously, people looking at us think, look how impressive those two guys are. And they say, but Sunshine's never on camera, so she's just a pond scum, just a pollywog. She's a nothing. But God looks at the heart, and he says, well, I'm looking at your heart and looking at your heart and looking at her heart. And he may say, well, no, you two are the pond scum, and she is the one who needs a little bit of respect.
And hey, I use some AI here to pull up this quote. If you give me, I want to read.
By the way, that is joking. If you're new to the podcast, it was joking. We really are the pond scum, especially Will. Go on.
Yeah. So one of the main bad guys in this fiction trilogy by Lewis is named Weston, and this is the quote: "I am no mere individual. I am the representative of the human race, its brain, its will. What I do is done for the future of my species, and the laws that bind lesser men do not bind me."
Yeah.
So he's like,
the law that bind lesser men. And that, isn't that communism?
yeah.
You think of Mao and Stalin, greatest good for the greatest number means, and who gets to choose that? Well, me.
Of course.
I'm not going to kill me.
Yeah.
So, so they justify themselves. That's a dangerous thing. And then, but God equalizes the playing field. He looks over the whole human race, and he is the only one who can measure. So truly, none of us can truly judge another person. By that, I don't mean we can't judge an act. You can judge an act as sinful or non-sinful, if by judge you mean discern. And if you're an actual cop, you can discern and arrest. And if you're an actual judge, you can judge it. And if you're on a jury, you can judge it. But I mean, you can't say who's a better person than another person, because only God sees the heart. God has his own little heartometer. Everyone gets a score. We don't know our score. He does. So how should we therefore interact with each other? It nullifies this strong desire in me to be impressive to you. Who's you? Anybody. I mean, and you have that in you, and
Oh yeah.
everyone has it. They can lie about it, but it's in you. You want people to like, not hate, or admire, or at least fear and respect. You want to be viewed as esteemable.
Nobody wants to be insignificant.
Yes, or definitely, or even worse, unimportant and despised.
Yeah.
Condemned. You're horrible. But this erases that in how I interact with other people. If he says, look, you don't know your heart, you don't know anybody's heart, okay, I'm going to have to be a lot more humble about the way I treat people and a lot less fearful about what they think of me. Because they may esteem me, and I might say, well, you're making a mistake. I'm not as sharp as you think I am. Or they may condemn me, and if they see my heartometer reading, well, you better be careful condemning me. You may be, in another place in Romans, Paul says all men are condemned. Why? Because in the way, when you judge, you yourself do the same thing. That's true of all of us, not just the Pharisees. And then he says, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. All right, that's a new idea to this sentence. You justify yourselves in the sight of men, bad, but God knows your heart, takes the power out of that.
It's not new to this gospel, though.
What is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. What do you mean it's not new?
I hear that, and my brain immediately goes back to the upside-down kingdom. The last will be first, the first will be last.
That's right.
I came to serve, not to be served. In the Sermon on the Mount, which I believe shows up 10 chapters ago-ish.
Well, let's say some of the sayings do. It's in Matthew,
but
and people argue whether Luke has the same sermon or just the same sayings.
But regardless, right?
Regardless.
It's earlier in this book.
Poor shall be rich. Those who mourn shall be blessed.
And most of those categories, those inverted kingdom categories, I would say would fit into this. What is highly esteemed on earth is viewed as the lesser value thing in the kingdom of God, right? It's so to me that's not a new idea. It's a reiteration of
so
the
why
upside down kingdom.
why then, Will, do men highly esteem the wrong things? Because obviously if God highly esteems something, it should be esteemed. And if God detests something, it should be detested. So when it says, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God,
Because I think
why are we esteeming the wrong things?
I think it goes back to the fall. It's the desiring to be like unto God, pride. I don't know. I'm trying to collect my thoughts.
Let me give you an example while you collect your thoughts.
Okay.
There are a lot of women online today, and I guess they're in real life too, somewhere, but I don't meet them in my own real life, whose lips look just strange, whose cheeks look strange, because they're giving themselves injections and having plastic surgery done, and they're just starting to look funny. And then their butts look strange because a lot of them are messing around down there with these things. But their faces especially, they keep doing it till you go, I guess
you
that
look like an alien.
You don't look pretty anymore, or not as pretty as you used to look. And like Jeff Bezos' wife, you see pictures before and after. She's still pretty, I guess, but she looks plastic. Now, what's happening is what's esteemed among men, and obviously among women, is the idea of having big puffy lips and cheeks that sit a certain way and a forehead without wrinkles. And they look really stupid. Wait, I'm not supposed to say that word. Well, I can say it here. I can't say it in sermons anymore because one of my pastors told me that his parents in his campus don't let their kids say it, so I can't say it. But I think grown-ups can say stupid. This isn't a podcast for kids.
No, this is not a children's.
Unless their parents allow them. So this is what we'd call a parental guidance suggested. If your kid is 7 and you say stupid all the time and you don't mind, thank you. And to your 7-year-old, I say, some things in life are stupid, ain't they, kid? Like bedtime. And you and I can chat. We can be friends. But if you're like no, I don't want my kid.
Bedtime.
But if you're like, I don't want my kid using the word stupid, I respect your values. I'm not going to overstep them. Don't let your kid listen. That's why it's called parental guidance. So anyway.
So these women look stupid.
They look really stupid.
Because they're valuing the wrong thing.
It's highly esteemed among men. And he says what's highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. What first came to my mind was beauty. Beauty is a gift from God, and some women are more beautiful than others in the opinion of all women. I'm not saying it's my opinion. All women think
objectively.
A friend of mine somewhere once told me that. Let's ask Sunshine. Hey, do you think some women are more beautiful than others?
It's a hard question. I was just in a conversation with somebody about that. Yes.
You don't have to name any names.
Yes.
You do. And do other women you talk to realize when, say, a particularly beautiful woman is around, they notice that person's particularly beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah. So women notice beauty. And there's nothing, and it's good, right? Beauty is good.
Yeah. But
a beautiful face with an ugly heart, you know, how do you pick the girl you want to go after? You could really make a mistake if what's estimable in your mind is simply the outward appearance of a woman.
Yeah, I even know some concrete examples of that in my life.
Yeah, don't name those people.
I won't. They're not around here. But I can.
Sure, they're not.
But I know people listening, I'm sure do too, right? If outward appearance is the number one thing basing your courtship, you often end up in painful marriages.
And likewise with men, if you think, well, he's not only the most handsome, he has the nicest car, and he's the captain of the football team.
And he makes a lot of money.
Whatever things women esteem, the leader, the powerful, the upward mobile, he doesn't mean he's a good person. And yeah, so we esteem certain things based on the wrong values, I think. And that's detestable to God. Can you correct that? Can we esteem the right things among men? Is that correctable? Or are we forever going to esteem the wrong things? I mean, when Jesus says, for that which is highly esteemed among men, I think it's a general rule that's always true of the worldview of the masses or the zeitgeist. But I don't think that has to be true of you or me.
No, I think it takes active fighting against. We get admonished and exhorted all over the New Testament to fight against this. I was just in 1 Corinthians 12 last night about spiritual gifts, and Paul using the metaphor of different members of the body, and how some members of the body are highly esteemed and others aren't, and how we should more esteem. We give esteem to those that are less esteemed. I can't remember, but you get the point. He's saying that all the parts matter.
In
God
fact,
made them all special.
We give more honor to the ones who are less esteemed.
Yes.
Like, you normally will buy a special product, even if you're not that careful about your body, for your armpits. I mean, there's a multi-million-dollar industry of selling antiperspirant and whatever, deodorant to men. It's not like men buy a lot of products for beauty, skin care, but they don't want to smell. But that is not a desirable part of the body. When they put on their Facebook or whatever, their profile pic, it's never their armpit. Here's my armpit, because that will not get a woman's attention. Great armpit you got there. So that which is least desirable, you show more honor. You're actually buying a special product for it, taking care of it so it doesn't stink. And that's what Paul is saying there. And how does that go to this? What connection are you seeing here?
Well, I see it as another. In that passage, there's a warning to not overvalue certain gifts over others. He says at the end, not everyone is an apostle, are they? Not everyone works miracles, do they? Not everyone has the gift of prophecy, do they? And he's basically saying, like, don't envy the gifts of others. All the gifts are important. God made you with the gifts you have to fit into the body the way you do, and when the body succeeds, we all rejoice together, and when any part of the body suffers, we all suffer together.
Okay.
And he's basically saying, like,
everybody matters,
and everybody's important in their own way.
Good.
And he's reminding you to not overesteem one spiritual gift over another, even though he says it's good to desire the higher spiritual gifts, but
no, he didn't call them higher.
I think he does. Greater. He calls them greater.
Well, no, because he says the least is tongues, and that's the one they want. And then he says...
And then he goes into the whole love.
And then he says, but above all things, love.
Love, yeah.
So I think that's a perfect example of how we can not stay in this trap of what's highly esteemed among men is detestable. That's perfect, because what it's showing us is if you think like Jesus teaches you to think, you're going to esteem everyone as valuable. And now that is not detestable in the sight of God. So this isn't a death sentence. This is a general truism, an axiom about fallen man. They're going to esteem the wrong things. They're going to think the wrong things matter. But that's detestable in the sight of God. That's a harsh word, detestable.
Yeah, really negative.
Yeah, he doesn't like the taste of it at all. It's abhorrent. It's I don't know any synonyms. Disgusting. Yeah, it's disgusting, your value system, he says, to the world without God. And that's very interesting. How do you go through life without being a complete cynic, knowing that God thinks the world you live in has detestable values? I don't know the answer to that.
Hope.
Hope.
Hope in the end.
Well, you got to see some love in the people who are holding to values. You have to love people who hold to detestable things, I think. Anyway, so then he goes on from this idea, after he's just slammed them, he's about to go in a direction that I find interesting and somewhat difficult to interpret because of the last verse. But he seems to be saying, okay, big picture, he's talking to the Pharisees who are scoffing at him about telling them they can't love money. And then he rebukes them saying, you're justifying yourselves, but your value system God hates. That's what just happened. You're not that impressive. And then he jumps right into a talk about the Old Testament and the coming of the new message of the gospel, or through Christ. And he says this, the law and the prophets were proclaimed until John. Law and the prophets is the Bible. If you were to buy a Bible, a Hebrew Bible today in English, it would probably have the title Tanakh, I think. And I don't even know what that means, but that's what it says. And then it says it contains the Torah, which is the law.
Which is the 5 books of Moses.
Right. And the Ketuvim and the...
Etuvim.
Something like that. I don't even remember.
It's in my brain from some seminary class.
I'm pretty sure I know the Torah is the law, and the other one is...
Ketuvim and Etuvim.
The writings and the prophets.
Yeah.
So the poets and the prophets, the Psalms and all that. So he's talking, when he says law and the prophets, he's saying what in his day would have been the Bible. So he's saying the Bible was proclaimed until John. Now that's John the Baptist. And we've already known from Luke elsewhere that John the Baptist is considered the greatest man of the Old Testament era, because Jesus said, you call him a prophet. I tell you, no greater man has been born among women than John, but the least in the kingdom is greater than him. So we get a changeover in age. Like the age of the Old Testament is gone with John. The age of God revealing things through the law, the writings, and the prophets is over. And then it says, since that time, the good news of the kingdom of God has been preached. So from the time John handed off the baton to Jesus, Jesus has been preaching the gospel of the kingdom of God, the good news that the kingdom of God is among you and the kingdom of God is coming in fullness. So there's a message change. For 2,000 years, the Jews had the law and the prophets giving them the word of God. Now the word of God comes in the form of Jesus preaching the gospel. And it says since that time, the gospel of the kingdom of God has been preached, and then everyone is forcing his way into it. That last bit is hard to interpret only because it's hard to interpret. It's translated correctly, but no one knows what it means. It could have a very negative thing, or it could even be a positive thing. It could be in the negative. Now that people are seeing that Jesus is preaching the gospel, some people want to take it over and make it their own and do what they want. I tend to look at it as the positive, but I could be wrong, and that would be everyone wants what this is. Everyone's seeing the gospel, and the crowds are packing in to get it. I don't know which is which, so I'm not going to worry too much about that phrase, believe it or not, except to say that the word everyone shows us it's got everyone's attention in Israel, and it's popular. So the gospel of the kingdom is preached. Okay, so I don't know why he goes here next. That's what makes this difficult to translate. Why do you go from saying, the Pharisees, you're scoffing at me because I said you're lovers of money, but you're justifying yourselves, and that's no way to live. You should let God determine who's good and not, because your values are detestable. And I want you to know something else. The Bible you preach is up until John, but now there's a new sheriff in town, and it's Jesus. and then he says, but then he goes backwards and said, but he wants to say, but understand me, that doesn't mean that the law and the prophets are irrelevant. Verse 17, but it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one stroke of a letter of the law to fail. So why is he going here? Why is he talking about the subject of the Bible? And that's because that's what he's talking about. I don't know the answer to that question. And I've already preached this sermon, by the way, by the time you hear it, but I haven't preached it as I sit here now. And I'm not going to answer this question real well in the sermon because I don't know the answer why he makes this turn. But
yeah, I'm bringing stuff in from other places. Like I'm not in my mind not staying in this passage well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's very expansive. It gets your mind to think other thoughts.
I'm thinking it's easier than one.
For heaven and earth
He's
to pass
saying
away.
The law isn't going away, and what these guys don't realize. Okay, this is bad exegesis, but they're esteeming themselves, and then he says they're justifying themselves, and what's going on in my brain is like these guys don't realize, but the law is condemning them because that's what the law does.
Maybe that's what he's saying.
And God can see their heart and knows that the law is condemning them, and like.
And I get that flavor, by the way. That flavor does come through.
And they don't realize it. They need the gospel because the law has done its job.
Maybe that
in the sight of God, these guys are condemned because he sees their heart, and they don't realize it, but they're breaking the law.
The whole bit about the gospel I don't get. Like if he just said the law condemns you.
Yeah, why wouldn't he just say that?
Then verse 17, if he cuts out verse 16.
If he said, you've had the law and the prophets all this time and you still don't understand.
Yes, or if he cut out verse 16 altogether and he went from what's detestable in the eyes of men, what's justifiable in the eyes of men is detestable in the eyes of God, it's easier for the heaven and earth to pass away than one stroke of the letter of the law to fail. And then he goes to a breaking of the law next. And
you guys are breaking it and you don't.
So that makes sense.
Why wouldn't, if that's what he wanted to say.
Why do you throw that in there? I don't know why. But
I don't know.
You don't have to know why to observe what is said, by the way. You might say, well, what? You're the pastor and you don't know why. You don't know everything about this. Yeah, and maybe I'll learn more, maybe I won't. But
we already declared we're pawn scum. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right. But here's what I will say. What do you do with a passage that you can't fully understand? You observe things that you do understand and state those.
That's good.
Right?
That's a good principle.
That's always what you do. So what do I understand? Well, I understand the law and the prophets, the Bible. I understand about John as a new age.
And he's not abolishing the Old Testament.
Right. And that the gospel is now the thing that's preached, and I have an understanding what the Bible teaches about that. And I understand verse 17. He's not abolishing the Old Testament law. In fact, he's fulfilled the Old Testament. It's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one stroke. How easy is it to get heaven and earth to pass away? I don't think it's easy. There's people try to destroy the earth. Go for that. And once you've finished that, start on the stars. It's hard to get heaven and earth to pass away, but not as hard as it is to make a movement on one stroke of one letter of the law. He's establishing the Old Testament as an immovable truth. And then
out of nowhere,
he says everyone who divorces his wife. Verse 18 almost looks like a typo.
Yeah.
Like the copyist took the verse from the wrong chapter and dropped it in here.
Yeah. Where is that? All right, lead pastor Mike. This is out of left field.
Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries one who's divorced from a husband commits adultery. So what I did on the sermon was I separated out verse 18, and my next sermon, which might have already been preached by the time I said this, covers divorce as a subject. Because
and you just preached that one.
Well, the reason I did that, made that decision, isn't I can easily wrap it up, but I'd wrap it up like this. I'd point out that the Pharisees were known in that day for giving lots of reasons for men to divorce their wives, and lots of them were divorced. There were even some Pharisees who said you can divorce your wife if she's not a good cook on a consistent basis. Others said, no, you had to do worse. But the point was they divorced their wives regularly. And so he's pointing out to them that they're hypocrites, they're lawbreakers. I could say that is the logical flow as best I can do. But then it leaves everyone in 2025, which is when this sermon's preached, saying, wait a minute, you just said they're completely distracted by verse 18. I don't care about those Pharisees. Did you just say that anyone who marries a divorced woman is committing adultery? Did you just say, how does this work? There's all kinds of divorce in our culture, and there's all kinds of divorce people in our church, and they need more of an explanation. What does the Bible teach on that? So I pulled out 18 and said, we'll cover this next week, and we will. So and
Interesting.
We're not going to cover it now either. So stay tuned. We will cover it next week, God willing, on this very podcast. But up till here, what I focused on this passage, I broke it into 2 sermons. Getting through Luke with some speed is hard to do, and it's certainly hard if the pastor breaks out one stinking verse. We would never get through it if it was one sermon per verse. But I think we have to do it here. It's just going to be it's not going to be fair to the congregation. It's like you hit them with a bat and ran away. Didn't tell them why you hit them with a bat.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to talk about that.
Interesting.
So instead what I did on the sermon I am yet to preach is I focused on what I found fascinating, verse 15. The truth is there is a habit of fearing men instead of fearing God. I did not major on the law and the prophets part, just mentioned it, explained it. Why not? Because that's a third sermon. There's the last sermon was one long story. This one
is nitty gritty.
Sake, you could have 3 or 4 sermons on it. All right, well, that's it. I don't have any application for today except for this. If you haven't subscribed or followed, if you're listening on Spotify, follow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, subscribe, hit like, and if you comment, all the better. We got a comment from our good friend Don freaking Bauer.
Donnie freaking Bowers.
Who we love, and pray for old Donnie if you can. He's not been able to move around as much. When he was here, he had his oxygen tank, and we love him, and the Lord loves him, and the Lord knows his days, but he still hangs in with us. And he sent us some feedback, and he said, why don't you 2 young men talk a little bit more about some other religions? And so we're going to take that into consideration and maybe think of other religions that it might be helpful to discuss. We've already slammed the crap out of Islam, which is always fun to me. I always enjoy that. I like beating up Satan wherever I can, and Islam is of Satan. But there are other false religions of Satan too, and we can beat them up. So thank you, Don. But if you would leave a comment or share, if you're listening to this, why don't you hit share and stick it on whatever social media you go to. Why do we say do this? So that we can get rich and famous? First, we're not getting any extra pay for doing this. The only one getting rich off it, and she's not even getting rich, is Sunshine, because it means she has job security. As long as we do this, we need a producer. But trust me, she ain't getting rich. So the reason we do it is we want to encourage people with the Word of God. And if you think this encourages you, the more people who see it are encouraged. And
you want a fun, distracting fact that I just learned today?
I love
which
fun.
I was shocked.
Yes, I'm ready to be distracted by fun.
The majority, if you total Spotify and YouTube, the majority by far of our listeners are female. I would have never assumed. Yeah.
Hey,
I know.
I'm a hit with the
thought
ladies.
We were probably 80-20
men,
women. But
honey,
no.
I'm going to talk to my wife right now. Listen, I know I'm a hit with all the ladies, but you're my only girl. I just want you to know that. Okay. No, I can't believe that.
I can't believe that either. I made some comment in a podcast recently that I talked to the ladies, and I said, yeah, whatever handful of you that are out there actually listen to this that are women. And I was totally off base. The majority are women.
Well,
as
guess
Google assumes.
I guess they're just smarter than the men again.
I guess. Yeah.
Hey, listen, let's get to something completely serious. The Babylon Bee. Look, we're going to show a video in its entirety and just let you enjoy it. So we're not going to talk over it. We'll talk afterwards. But I just thought I think the Babylon Bee is getting better. Their talent is getting better. Their writing's getting better. You may or may not agree with me, but this is about a liberal who time travels back in time to kill Hitler, to make the world a better place. So whenever you're ready, as soon as it plays, I'll shut up. You just turn it up. Sehr gut. Sehr gut.
I'm a time traveler from the year 2025, and I've come here to kill you, Hitler.
Oh, not again. I'm never gonna have enough time to finish these paintings with all of these time travelers trying to kill me.
Well, I'm going to succeed.
Before you pull the trigger, can I just ask why? Why do all of you people want to kill me?
Isn't it obvious? I'm a progressive, a liberal, a fighter for social justice. And you are a fascist who implemented a reign of terror. And while the effects of your policies devastated the world for decades, soon we will be able to take back the White House, and we will be able to use the government to force people to follow our great ideas.
You want to use government power to force your ideas on the populace. Me too! That's fantastic!
What? No. Ugh. You and I have nothing in common. What I'm saying is there are people in our time with dangerous ideas, and we need to silence them.
Silencing those who disagree with you. I do that too! Oh, wunderbar! Oh, the Nazi movement will not die with me.
Don't give me that! I'm enlightened, and you're as bad as... well, as Hitler. Listen, what I'm trying to say is we are very close to implementing a utopia, as long as we can get rid of some certain undesirable people groups.
Yes, like the Jews.
Yes, like the Jews. Oh.
So, in the future,
Oh.
you also do not like the Jews?
Well, no. But we don't believe in segregating all the races like you do. I mean, except for, like, graduation ceremonies. And dorms. And hiring practices. Oh, and admissions policies. That sort of thing.
I too am a fan of the segregation. I'm sorry, I have to ask, is this a real firearm or is this some kind of toy for kinder?
It's a flare gun. I'm trying not to support America's toxic gun culture. I'm a firm believer in gun control.
Gun control! This was one of my ideas too. Ban them from the undesirables. Yes, look here. Oh, and your shirt. This is an organization founded by Margaret Sanger. Yes?
Wait, you know about Margaret Sanger?
Jawohl, of course. Oh, she's such a lovely person.
No. She's a fighter for reproductive rights, for women's empowerment,
And the eradication of undesirable populations by means of eugenics. Brilliant lady, very inspiring. I must use some of her ideas in our socialized healthcare system.
socialized healthcare. That's not your thing. That's our thing.
No, it's very much my thing. Did you know that Nazi means National Socialist German Workers' Party? Nazi is just more catchy. Nazi. Rolls off the tongue.
No. This can't be true. This has to be some sort of mistake. We are nothing alike. You're Adolf Hitler, evil right-wing fascist dictator, and I'm a feminist restorative justice advocate. And a vegetarian.
You're a vegetarian? Me too!
Okay, I am so confused right now. I came here with a clear goal in mind to kill the most evil man who I've ever lived. Besides Ronald Reagan. But now that I'm meeting you in person, you're not at all what I thought you were. And your painting is actually really good. What do you call it?
I call it Ein Reich ohne Juden.
Wow. I don't know what that means, but it sounds beautiful.
It does, doesn't it?
So that was funny, wasn't it?
Dude, that was great. That was really well done.
What part stood out in your mind? I know you just saw it. It's hard to remember the whole thing.
Most of that stuff I knew already.
But it's not the news. It's the way they used art to show how today's liberal point of view
It's the same as that.
is the Nazis. You hate the Jews. We hate the Jews. Do you hate the Jews? Yes, but
And I think that's accurate. Margaret Sanger, I think, is a contemporary.
oh, well, she founded Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, and I think she's a contemporary of Hitler.
Yes, eugenics movement.
Yeah.
So he was writing that in 1933.
So he was familiar with her.
Well, if not, he was at least in the same thought stream.
Yeah.
He goes, what a beautiful person. Wunderbar. He goes.
When she says socialist Medicare, he goes, no, that is very much
socialism
my
is
thing.
socialist healthcare is our care. No, it's our thing. He goes, no, that's very much my thing.
Very much my thing. And he's
We are
taking
the
notes.
National Workers Socialist Party, but Nazi is easier to say. Rolls off the tongue. Nazi, Nazi, Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate the Babylon Bee. I appreciate art, and they're getting better at it, not worse at it. That was really good. So before we talk about John MacArthur, which I guess we have to, someone else died who I think is way more interesting to me recently, and that's Ozzy Osbourne.
I had no idea till you told me today.
So Ozzy Osbourne, I think what makes him interesting, when I was in high school, he had gone solo with whatever album the Crazy Train's on, and that was big news. But then I became a Christian, and I thought, I don't like Ozzy Osbourne because he's a Satanist. But he's not really a Satanist. In fact, if you listen to War Pigs from Black Sabbath or Crazy Train, the lyrics are not satanic. And also we're looking for bumper music, and we're not, Sunshine is, for us. And I want to suggest that we use Crazy Train. Now,
I don't hate it.
So what I'd like
it's
to
your
do,
show.
What I'd like to,
I'm
well,
just the
I'm going to leave
sidekick.
it.
I'm like Robin.
I'm going to.
In the sidecar.
Yeah. Is your seatbelt on? Citizens wear their seatbelts, Robin. You ever see that show? They're chasing a bad guy and they stop at a red light. But anyway, because the citizens follow the laws. But no, I'm not going to run over Sunshine. I have to convince her. If I don't convince her, we're not going to do it. But I think that the people listening should have an opinion. So I want to make my case. But then if you guys listening tell us, no, I don't want that as bumper music. If you can offer better bumper music, like the Pretenders, My City Is Gone. Would you like that as bumper music?
Don't know it off the top of my head.
Would you like Pretenders, My City Is Gone?
I don't know it either.
Oh, no? Can you play Spotify through that? If I play it here on the mic, will it pick it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys don't know that one, but I think it would be good bumper music. And I'm going to play it real quick, and you tell me. I know you've never heard it.
I might have heard it. I just don't know the name.
You just don't know.
I know a lot of stuff that
now
I don't
you're
know
covering your tracks, aren't you? You're covering. I think for a radio show it might be good.
Oh, we can't use that. You know why we can't use that. You don't know why we can't use that.
No, I don't.
That's the king.
That's the king, baby.
The king of radio.
We couldn't do it. That's Rush Limbaugh intro.
No downtown.
And you get called Sunshine as an ode to Snurdly.
Yes,
you don't even know that.
That's right.
But
The reason we don't use these names, we keep you anonymous, is because of the king, Rush Limbaugh. He kept his crew anonymous for their own safety.
I think that's apropos
did you know
here.
that? So that's the Pretenders, Chrissy Hynde. And for a while she got a little mad at him for using that, but then she didn't put up much of a stink because her dad loved Rush Limbaugh. No, but so why don't you play the beginning of Crazy Train good and loud for us? And you guys at home can decide, should this be our bumper music? And there's video with it. We wouldn't use the video. Here we go. Oh, yeah. So, Will can play this, Sunshine, on a guitar. So turn it down, but don't turn it off. So
this show feels like a crazy train sometimes.
It does feel like a crazy train. But I want you to keep it on because I want us to see the lyrics that are going to come up on your screens at home. And I want you to see crazy, but that's how it goes. Do you know the words of this song?
No.
Watch. Millions of people living as foes. Foes means enemies. right, of one another, maybe it's not too late to do what? To learn how to love and forget how to hate. You know, I always just assumed he was singing Satan-y kind of music, because look at his face. Mental wounds not healing, life's a bitter shame. So, going off the rails. The world is so hard, it's making him crazy. Maybe it's not too late to love. That is a downright redemptive set of lyrics, isn't it?
Yeah, and pretty accurate.
So, okay, you can fade him out. But I think what caught Ozzy, what made Ozzy such an interesting character, he's in heavy metal, a genre that had a lot of darkness. For you youngsters out there, rock and roll became what could be called acid rock or hard rock. That was an edgier kind of rock. They don't usually call it acid rock anymore. It went from, Bill Haley in the Comets, Rock Around the Clock, and Elvis and Chuck Berry, to rock and roll like the Beatles. But then there was acid rock, which they thought you would
started getting bigger hair and tighter pants.
When those music you would listen to for the tighter pants, like if you were doing acid, and some of that was the Beatles, but some of that was Pink Floyd, and some of that. And then it started to go to what we would call hard rock, and that was your Led Zeppelin. You turn up just loud to listen to the instruments play really loud. And there was still rock and roll, I guess, that was going on, but wasn't hard rock. But then hard rock went farther to what we'd call heavy metal. And then it went to something that we'd call glam rock. And
glam rock's bad.
Glam rock is so dumb.
They should have stopped way before.
And then there was, after that, industrial metal, and now there's monsters screaming. Wah, and I think that's dumb. But some people like it. But on that progression was Black Sabbath. They kind of they were a band from the 70s who kept going into the 80s, and their first lead singer, their great lead singer, was Ozzy Osbourne. They had a guy named Randy Rhoads playing guitar, and he died, of course, because what the heck, rock stars die. They take too many drugs. But they kind of bridged. They were harder than Led Zeppelin, not as good. And they kind of bridged us over to the Metallicas and the Slayers and the Megadeths.
Yeah.
And it really went a dark direction then too. Much darker than Led Zeppelin. And so, I mean, Black Sabbath, it's obviously meant to be a blasphemous way of doing things. Ronnie James Dio and whatnot. But Ozzy became so big, he did his solo stuff and he became bigger. Then he had an Oz Fest. And he'd bring all these metal people together. I never went to an Oz Fest because really, once you got to metal, I was very picky. I didn't like a lot of metal music. I was a hard rock guy, southern rock guy, and a rock and roll guy. That was me. I like to dabble in the metal. That's it. But Ozzy kept coming back around because after that, he reinvented himself through a reality TV show called The Osbournes.
And that's how my generation, I mean, I was in the monster screaming, more modern heavy metal stuff, like death metal, and it's even changed since I was younger. And everybody knew that Ozzy was a legend because Ozfest was still a thing. He's really old and not involved with it, but like,
do you know he just did a concert 2 weeks ago?
I didn't know
last week.
But then
his final concert.
My familiarity with Ozzy was kind of through the reality TV show, which was,
and I think most people
kind of. I thought it was like kind of sad. It's kind of,
but he was lovable.
Very lovable. He seemed like a soft personality.
He's a nice
He's a dad,
and so
seemed like a loving dad on the show.
And he was very open to Christians witnessing to him. More than one Christian tells stories of witnessing to Ozzy. I don't know if he got saved though. He literally did a show just days before dying.
We got a reference like his most famous act. The thing that made him most famous of all, in my mind.
Eating the head of a bat.
He bit the head off of a live bat on stage. Live bat,
which
bit
is
his head off
on that
in concert.
Why?
I don't know.
On
Shock
that
value.
album cover you got there, I'm pretty sure. Play that again.
You want to talk about cementing yourself
pause the still
in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Just hit that and pause the still. if you could.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
And if I don't know, is there anything coming out of his mouth? I can't see in that. If it's not that, it's on the back of that album. I think he's got like it looks like red Jello, but he was playing off the fact that he
decapitated a bat,
and so he has this crap coming out of his mouth. And,
hey, wild stunt, but I'm way after his time, and everybody had heard of that.
But when you hear, if you look at YouTubes of him talking, well, first, he could hardly talk by the end of his life because too many drugs.
Yes.
But before that...
Go watch the Osbournes. It's a great testament to not doing drugs, kids.
He did a song called Suicide Solution. And in the 80s, some guy killed himself. And they said they blamed Ozzy. And he said, look, I don't want kids to kill themselves. I'm not trying to write about that. Really, War Pigs, wild name, cool name, Dark, is about why we shouldn't do war, why we shouldn't do war for profit, for selling arms. And it's cynical. The government just wants war. It's just like the woke right today. The government just wants war so they can sell their stuff. But it's still, he was not a horrible person, at least not as we measure horrible. Is he saved? No idea. But he made a huge impact on let's call it white folk culture in America. I'm not saying no other colors listen to him, but definitely white kid music. But he's most heard these days in stadiums for that opening to that song. If you go football and sometimes basketball, you'll hear that.
Pirate games,
they like to do that at the beginning of Crazy Train, and they never get to the words because the game starts up. So goodbye, Oz.
I didn't know idea he died.
Well, he did.
Made it a long time. He had to be in his 80s.
No, he just looked like he was 104.
He just looked like
he's
he was
like 74, 75 years old. Ted Nugent, who's never done any drugs and is just as crazy in rock and roll, used to say, my friend Ozzy's going to die because he does too many drugs. And
76.
And let's see, how old is Ted Nugent? Ted Nugent's a crazy man.
Yeah.
And
he said he never had to do alcohol or drugs because he was crazy enough sober.
I got a feeling if you took
what he says.
The blood out of his body and put it in yours, you'd lose your mind. Yeah, he's 76, so they're the same age. So they were contemporaries, and they'd played together, they knew each other. And he would say, Ozzy needs to stop doing drugs. Dude's mind is fried. But anyway, enough rock and roll. Let's talk about John MacArthur. Go ahead. John MacArthur, the pastor at Grace Community Church in California. Have you been to that church?
No.
I have.
He's got a big... he became nationally known through his radio ministry, right? Grace to You.
Mostly books, but yeah, and radio. He mostly became famous because he would bash charismatics and bash... He became famous for writing books where he told everyone how wrong they were. Now, he was generally a solid teacher of the gospel. That's all I got to say. He was a solid teacher of the gospel. I think I got to be careful what I say because his effect was positive on many people's lives, and for that, it's good, and I'm glad.
Yeah, and
that's what I'm going to leave it for now.
I would say personally, I think it had a positive effect on my life. I've consumed.
Why? What about him?
I don't know. I just think I would say by happenstance, but of course.
How did it help you?
I thought he was a pretty clear teacher.
I think that's his strength.
I
agree.
His preaching style came across with clarity.
I think that's his strength.
I was listening to a bunch of his stuff in conjunction with some other teachers that I still like that I think started me down the theological road that I've ended on that I think is very much Harvest theological path. By that I mean kind of like the Reformed train. It was nice because he was a good counterpoint in a lot of his... I thought he was much softer in his conference appearances. One of my favorite debates is the baptism debate between him and R.C. Sproul. They're very good friends. They're both Reformed. He's Baptistic. He did not let up and thinking that R.C. Sproul is totally wrong about infant baptism, and they had some really jovial. I thought it was a great example of how you could vehemently disagree about a doctrine like that and still clearly have love for one another and do it in a jovial manner. I just remember that specifically being edifying to me, watching two pastors disagree but still clearly like each other.
Pastors
seem like they
both
like
with,
each other
with great reputations. I think what R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur show that if you'll preach the gospel faithfully, and don't waver and stick with it over a long period of time, especially if you can do it in one place, and you don't get into a scandal where you fool around on your wife, and you don't compromise with the world, you can have a positive impact on a lot of people for a long time. And so hats off to them for that. I think most of my difficulty, it's funny because if you compare the doctrines that are important to me and that I teach on, I'm very close to John MacArthur on everything.
Yeah, you overlap pretty highly.
I think the only thing is he's dispensational in his premillennial view. I also am a premillennial, but I'm not dispensational. But besides that, we overlap completely. I think culturally we'd approach everything completely differently. But we thank God for his ministry, and he's no longer here.
No, so I gotta put you on the hook though, because I think it's funny.
Work.
It's funny to me. So many critics of John MacArthur is that he often comes off harsh or black and white or absolutist. I mean,
none of that bothers me.
You have
none of that bothers me.
Well, you used the word jerk before. You did.
When did I say that?
Off camera, but you said he.
Oh my God!
I'm a witness. I heard it.
You said, yeah, but
so
I agree with him, but he could do it, not being such a jerk.
At men's retreat are now going to come up here?
No, I was joking with Mike before the cameras rolled.
To the greater public. I mean, certain things. What's the Bible say about discretion? Will has none. Look, there's no discretion. This is a bad person sitting next to me.
No, I was chiding Mike before the cameras rolled, because I agree with many of the
here's the
criticisms, and then I laughed, saying, the funniest thing is you take very strong stands on certain things, and I think appropriately.
But
so.
Sometimes I do go too far.
But there are certain people who might have the same critiques about your stances as they take on John MacArthur's. I find it funny to me.
He's just died. I want to honor him. I think he's a brother in Christ. I've always said so.
Oh, and I think he's enjoying glory right now. So
good.
Anyway, sorry. I just think that's funny.
No. Here, there's another side of things. His words have a way, in the effect of other people, that is ugly.
Of making them jerks.
Yes.
And that is a known.
I think he engenders pride. And I've been to his church. I even know a couple who was very much into, quote, Johnny Mac forever until they got burned within his church. And then they realized there's not in everyone, but there's a promotion in a lot of people of a lot of spiritual pride because of his willingness not to take a stand. I think that's the way, he takes a stand. No, because he'll throw anyone under the bus without nuance. And a lot of people, how do I know if someone's been reading a lot of Johnny Mac? They'll come up to me and
tell you how wrong you are.
And they'll be very uptight about the way something's happening in the church and why are we allowing it.
Yeah.
Is it really okay to have a hazing machine in here? Is it really okay to use a flat screen for worship? You've been reading Johnny Mac again, haven't you? Yes, and he's right about everything. Yeah, sure he is.
Yeah.
But culturally, he is 1940.
Yep.
And promotes that as I've heard him promote modern music isn't good, hymns are good, which is the silliest argument. It's not his central argument, but what it causes in people is pride. And
to the point that they call them like MacArthurites is a thing. It's
and
known
that's
stereotype.
But I also know he's blessed an awful lot of people, and he's taught a lot of people. And I guarantee you, if he's famous, I'm not. But in the world who the people know me, no doubt when I die, there's going to be people, he taught the gospel, but he was a jerk about me. So I'm not a better man. By far, he has done more. I'm going to assume he's done more for the kingdom of God than I ever will. And so you drew out of me my one criticism, my one annoyance is he could just stay in California. Just quit influencing the people here. I'm serious. I've had people come up to me. I used to sell the John MacArthur Study Bible in my church. And then somebody came up to me saying, "Did you see what he said about so-and-so in here?" "Yes." "You don't think that's right, do you?" "It's not charitable. It was in his notes." "Why do we have this in our bookstore?" I'm like, I was just hoping people would overlook that stuff. And God bless him. He's a better man than I am certain of that. And I'll leave it at that. I really appreciated his stand during the time of COVID. Period. He made a stand, and I was very proud of him. And happy
you want to talk about that? They, like everybody, shut down for a short period of time.
But California was especially
strict.
I don't think they shut down even for a week.
Okay.
But the worst part was in California, their governor was forcing. I mean, we shut down at first here. The reason why wasn't because the government asked us to. It was because the government told us we're all going to die.
Yeah, and we weren't sure what was happening.
And we think if we open the doors, are we going to kill everyone in our church? But once the smoke cleared and we realized
we're not going to die.
This is all Barbara Streisand. A few weeks later, we were back, and then I said, I'm never going to make that mistake again. I think at Grace to You or at the
Grace Community Church,
they were a little smarter, and they saw right away, let's just meet anyway. But it wasn't the initial thing, it was the ongoing thing. California said they were breaking the law. Pennsylvania, for all our faults as a state under Governor Wolf, who was not much of a leader for good, but for evil he was. But he didn't force us to shut down our churches. So a lot of churches did shut down around us, didn't open, but we did. But it didn't take near the courage it did in California, where in Los Angeles, the government was coming after you.
They could have came and arrested them.
Yes, and Rick Warren, the wimp at one of the largest churches in the country at Saddleback, said, we're going to obey the government and stay closed long as they say. And they did. They stayed closed for over a year because they're wimps. And they've also sold out the Bible with women pastors, which seems to be becoming epidemic these days of just selling out. But MacArthur stood strong, and I think a lot of people, myself included, took courage from that, admired that, respected that, and didn't budge and said, go ahead, sue us. And that was good. I think it gave a lot of people across the country courage.
Yeah.
To think straight.
Yeah, and like you said, it was in a time, I couldn't remember exactly the timeline, but it was in a time where like it took a lot of courage. It was still where nobody had any idea what was going on. It was very early.
Well, from day one, but I don't think they got the government's attention until the weeks went by. You know what I'm saying? And then California forever kept these laws against their people opening up, their churches opening up. And MacArthur said, hey, listen, you have no right over us. Which is interesting, by the way. I don't know if you know, but MacArthur thinks the Revolutionary War was a sin.
Yeah, I remember.
Which I think is...
I disagree.
Well, sure. Who wouldn't disagree? That's just an odd thing to say. But I understand where he gets that. But don't think he's a pacifist, because he was willing to buck the system in that moment. But the Revolutionary War was a sin. Okay, I'm not even going to try to process that. But
boy, you just brought me back. Wasn't that a crazy 3 years, everybody? Like
it's hard to believe that it's already been years ago.
Yeah.
It was insane.
It was a crazy
But the weather
time
around here was great. It was one of the best stretches of weather. I mean, it was such a great summer to weather-wise. it was ironic. It's like there's people who are losing their jobs, people who are
Their businesses are all shut down.
people don't know what to do with themselves, but the weather's nice.
Go out and do some yard work.
Yes, if you still have a yard. If you're not outdoors, if you are outdoors, it's a nice time to be outdoors. Anyway, so that's come and gone. He's come and gone. He was, I'm going to assume, faithful in his field, and now he was even outstanding in his field. So if you went out in his field, there he was, just standing there. He did have a guy come out of him who started the Growing Kids God's Way, which became a bit of a cult. But all the MacArthurites were doing Growing Kids God's Way throughout the 80s. You ever hear that?
Nope.
Because, yeah.
Didn't he start the Master's Seminary?
Yes, but the Growing Kids God's Way thing was a big deal. Everyone was doing it. If your 6-month-old threw his bottle on the floor, whack. You put him to bed at the same time. You did everything the same way, and after a few years, and this was the way they did it at Grace Community. It turned out this guy, it was wacky. So MacArthur kicked him to the curb as fast as he could after that. I know the underbelly. I knew the people who went there. You wouldn't find a James Dobson book in his bookstore because Dobson was bad, because Dobson had the word psychologist next to his name. That was in the 80s. I was there. I saw it. But there's people who look at me the same way. He's here, he's gone. How about Spurgeon? Is that what we're talking about next? No. I got nothing else to talk about. I'm done. You've been gone a ways, so.
I got nothing.
Well, then we're done.
I got beach brain.
You got beach brain. You're fried.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then this is going to be a short one. For the people who don't like them long, this is short. 2 hours.
There you go.
No, an hour and 18 minutes.
Perfect.
This is pretty short.
Send in your questions.
And we'll send in our answers. See ya.
All right. See you, everybody.